Alexander reached out to me asking if I knew of any students that would be interested to learn more about the voter direct network that he has founded. And I knew of some upperclassmen that are fairly smart when it comes to political science and public administration, and fairly, I said it right. I think it's so important. He's also the independent candidate for the 3rd Congressional District. And I don't know about you, but the other 2 candidates didn't reach out to me or send me an email. Like this Van Orden guy, right? Like, he never sent me an email. And either did Rebecca Cook. And it's all about the money. If you know me, and if you have had me in other classes, I talk about how money is just so rampant in these elections that it's not about the people anymore. It's about the power, maintaining political power, your party's power. So it's about the party, and it's not about the people or the citizens, and that's disgusting to me. But as Alexander will admit and say and tell you, we still have a constitution that's in place, and we can derive from that the ability to take our government back. And he is developing a system that, I mean, what did you call it? Zero funding, right?
Yeah, zero money. Our idea is to eventually move to a system where money isn't in politics, and we just do democratic republicanism as the Constitution intends, would be the idea.
So we need 1,000 of him, and then we'll be fine.
Great.
So I'll turn it over to Alexander.
Awesome.
And I know you guys, he's going to be really good and ask some really good questions. I'm going to ask some questions too, but I think this is a breath of fresh air, and then we'll get into our regular discussions for the rest of the semester.
Cool, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It is so great to be back on campus. And I just want to start by saying thank you for investing in yourselves. It is a huge time and financial commitment to go to college and all of that. And then like the big question from that is like, who benefits, right? Society benefits immensely by the amount of time and money you are investing into yourselves. So I just wanted to start there and say thank you. The idea here is talking about a modern evolution of constitutional democratic republicanism. Just taking that to start with, constitutional democratic republicanism, of course, we have the US Constitution, and it creates a democratic republic. And our idea is how to modernize and evolve how we practice our Constitution. We think we can implement and should implement this idea without any constitutional amendment, legislative bill, executive order. We're just focused on how we practice our Constitution. And in so doing, when we modernize and evolve our political system with this idea, eventually, it is an anti-authoritarian, anti-party politics idea, and it's anti-political corruption and anti-political violence as well. Just wanted to start a little bit about me, Alexander Valiency Kent. Alexander, doesn't really matter. I live here in La Crosse, came up here when I was 18 for college and fell in love. Fell in love with the area, the trees, the river. We have a great network of nonprofits here supporting our community, and a great art scene as well. Bars are fun too. We've got a lot going on here. My personal background is in social work and philosophy. I wrote a book called Voter-Directed Democracy, which is what we're going to explore today. Founded Voter-Directed Network, which is the business we needed to create our app, voterdirectednetwork.com. It's a .com right now. Eventually, we want to move to an app. As your professor stated, I am the independent congressional candidate for Wisconsin District 3, and this work is truly my passion. And I encourage everybody, whatever your passion is, you have to follow it. That thing that lights your soul on fire. If you don't follow it, you're gonna have regrets, I guess. Love the humanities, love theater, art, music, camping, hiking. Life is fun. And if you feel like the darkness is building up, do more. Find your passions, find what you love. All right, the core ideas of voter-directed democracy. The fundamental premise here is that all systemic social, political, and economic problems in any society are the result of bad political decisions, actions, and inactions. That it is the political system, that it is public policy that creates all of our systemic outcomes. So if we want better systemic outcomes, we have to address things politically, and it has to be via government. Another core idea here that I love talking about is that humanity is overwhelmingly good and always has been. And it's one of these tough ideas to really digest now because all of the problems we're seeing in government, but humanity in general, when you look at the totality of the trillions of interactions in our country alone, they're pretty good. Many human interactions are neutral, which means like you're not hurting anybody, you're just sitting next to them, you're traveling next to them, you're waiting in line next to them. But then also looking at human interactions in general, some are positive and then go beyond that. They're great, amazing, loving, supportive, helpful, empathetic, polite, protective, courageous, community-oriented, and compassionate. This is the reality that we live in, that it is a small number of people that create a lot of the systems that we struggle under. And then with that general goodness, overwhelming goodness of humanity, one of the promises of democratic republicanism, which is this system where we source and implement the will of the people, is that humanity's everyday, normal, regular, casual goodness, collective wisdom, and collective knowledge shape all of our social, political, and economic systems. So this question of why democratic republicanism, because you're pulling knowledge, expertise, and wisdom from the greatest number of people, opposed to an authoritarian system where political decisions are made by a smaller group of people. So to really expand this idea as much as I can right now, at the biggest level, we're talking about the online political evolution is one way of saying it. Another way is saying our second independence. We had our first independence away from monarchy and that system of authoritarianism. Our second independence is moving away from the authoritarianism of party politics. And it's kind of 3 steps, but each step you can break down more. The first part is to be free and be an independent. Do not support political parties is the idea, financially or politically. They have been proven to be broken, flawed, immensely corrupt, often violent, incredibly divisive, and increasingly authoritarian, increasingly moving more and more away from the will of the people. Critically, importantly, we're talking about the US Constitution here, and my favorite thing, one of them, is that political parties are not a part of the US Constitution. If you read through them, they're not mentioned. So if you believe in democratic republicanism, if you believe in the US Constitution, you are independent. So we believe, and this idea is really based in knowing that our Constitution wants us to be all independents and represented by independent elected officials. And the idea of being an independent is not new whatsoever. What is the largest voting bloc in our country? Independence. Party affiliation and registration are at historically low numbers, 21, 22, 23%. So for decades now, people have been calling for an independent idea, an independent system that is constitutional. So promoting this idea of independence that we'll look even deeper at on the next slide is really crucial. It really starts this pathway forward and moving away from party politics. The second step of this really big idea, joining and supporting the online political evolution by organizing on voter-directed network and telling everyone. This is the crucial grassroots part of this. This is individuals joining the platform and then promoting the idea, via all of the different ways we can use technology, text, email, call, social media, and staying positive in your messaging is crucial. You can't evolve anything from a negative mindset, either individually or systemically. So staying positive in messaging is important. And then that last part there is essentially the ripple effects of marketing and messaging. If you message essentially 9 people and ask 3 or those 9 people to do the same, that's how we get mass messaging and marketing from a grassroots perspective. And then to really implement this system, we have to win at the ballot box. That's how voters win. Our first opportunity will be in 2028 if we have like a breakthrough moment. So we have to have a breakthrough moment from here. Winning election or having a breakthrough moment on social media or using traditional media to then we can actually evolve the system. And it's a realistic goal in that it'll take tens of millions of voters organizing on voter-directed network, but to have a federal government that is voter-directed, that is voter-controlled, it's only about 300 federal elected officials that will give voter control in the House of Representatives, the Senate, and ideally the White House. So it's got to be like a strategic 300, but that's all it takes, right? Tens of millions of people organizing on the platform, and then 300 federal elected officials to really see this idea through. Looking again at this idea of independence, the comprehensive systemic solution to corruption, violence, and authoritarianism of the party-controlled democratic republics has always been independence of all kinds and at all levels. So again, this idea of liberation, this idea of independence, independent thought, independent critical thinking, independent moral reasoning, and again, independent elected officials, which is consistent with the US Constitution that does not have political parties. Also, a part of the second independence is independent, nonpartisan media, institutions, and other enterprises that support our communities. Of all of those, we're actually doing really, really well because most of society is already independent. Most of society is nonpartisan. This university and every university I know of doesn't divide people into Team Red and Team Blue and treat them differently. Every nonprofit I know of doesn't divide people into Team Red and Team Blue and treat them differently. Partisan dynamics are only a part of the political system. If it were a useful system, we'd see it reflected in other parts of society. But in general, all parts of society, except for our political system, are independent and nonpartisan. And then again, the democratic republics we're going for are entirely voter controlled. This idea of 24/7, 365, independent from the violence and corruption of money, blackmail, and negative identity politics. I would say we have whispers of independence, whispers of freedom for like the 10 to 20 minutes that you take to complete your ballot. And then all of the power, all of the decision-making is housed in political parties. Whereas with this system, political power is constantly, relentlessly redistributed to voters in order to make those political decisions, and then the republic implements that. So this is the idea at its biggest level, at the highest level. All right. The voter-directed independent system. This is where we are constantly and relentlessly, the political power is decentralized, and therefore it's constitutional and democratic Republican political power. This is the idea of bottom-up decision-making from the people, the demos, to the state, and where voters have real yes-no political power. Voters think independently and for themselves, and each voter applies their own independent values to every issue. Thought, philosophy, moral reasoning are independent and self-generated. Again, this encourages independent, expansive, and free thinking. This is the foundation of universities and colleges, independent, expansive, free thinking, and it's grounded in ideas of transparency, dialogue, and shared reality, whereas currently our reality is being a bit fractured by various mechanisms. And it's optimized for evolve and solve mentality. We'll see on the next slide that the current system is this divide and conquer strategy, this fight to win mentality, a voter-directed, a voter-controlled, and independent system. We use the evolve and solve mentality. Evolve the system, bring it online, so we can solve all of our social, political, and economic issues, at least in theory. This is our current system. We have a party-driven, party-controlled system. This emphasizes centralized and consolidated and therefore authoritarian political power, top-down decision-making. Political parties have the real political power, which is yes-no political power. This system is supported by party media and party talking points and party loyalty. In most cases, the party-driven system, voters are expected to listen, repeat, and comply. Individual voter thought, philosophy, and moral reasoning are outsourced to this system, to this corrupt, divisive, and violent system. It encourages limited, conditioned, and constrained thinking. It relies on fear, division, misinformation, and tribal identity. And again, overall, these mentalities that emerge from party politics are divide and conquer, fight to win mentalities. Bringing all of that together to try and put it in one little chart, and the formatting of it got angry, sorry about that. But in our party-driven, party-controlled system, it's corrupt, it's flawed, it's broken. It's paid to play politics. It's less democratic, often authoritarian. It's money equals political power. And then that creates dangerous pathways to oligarchy, plutocracy, and tyranny of all kinds, which is what our system really is. Comparing that to the independent, online, voter-directed system, logical, voter-centric, evolved, transparent, accountable, honest, innovative, intuitive, collaborative, peaceful, less corrupt, nonviolent. All right, so that is kind of the basics of the philosophy itself. Any questions so far about the philosophy? Yes.
I'm wondering how feasible you think this is, especially with how divisive modern media is and how low political engagement there is amongst the general population. You're assuming a very well-informed and a very engaged voter when that's, to my knowledge, that's just not the reality that we're currently in.
Sure. I would answer that by saying that I think society will rise to whatever bar is set. You're completely right. The party-controlled political system wants voters to do two things: vote for their candidate and donate money. So this is asking a lot of it, but when you actually talk to voters, everybody has the issues they care about. Everybody is passionate about various different things, and creating a system that allows people's desires to actually be implemented, I think will create the mental and emotional momentum we need? Great question. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
How do you expect non-division? Because I guess like we all are independent in our own thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess how I'm viewing it is like we're independent in choosing our own party because we believe in certain beliefs from that party. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's like how do we? So if we're getting rid of the parties, I feel like I guess this is just me thinking about it and reasoning about it, but I feel like we're still going to be a little divided because you're either for one thing or you're against it. You know, that still causes that division. So I guess
Sure.
can you elaborate more on that?
Sure. So the first thing that comes to mind is that there are so many issues that an overwhelming majority of people agree on that aren't being implemented. If you go to our homepage, voterdirectednetwork.com, there's this idea of the 80% bill. And this isn't anything we did, but it's a nonprofit that is promoting this idea of 20 different items that over 80% of voters want that aren't being implemented. So first, it's this idea that the entire structure of party politics just isn't implementing the will of the people. But you're entirely right that eventually, when we're having these conversations online, we're going to vote and there's going to be an identified will of the people. And that will create division, right? But the idea is that we're unifying behind the independent system. A democracy in general functions and thrives on political faction. We want as many different ideas coming together as possible in order to find the best ones. So it's not necessarily like we're always going to agree. In fact, it's the opposite. We're always going to disagree. But if we're unifying behind this honest and transparent system, that's where the lack of division will come. And I think also you'll really see it play out in reaction to it. Because a lot of political violence and anger and hostility comes from us realizing that we're not being represented. But if it's a very clear and honest system where everybody is coming together and you see the clear results from a collective vote, I think people are gonna be more willing to accept those outcomes with such an honest and transparent system. And especially when we change like the biggest issues and improve upon the biggest issues and actually create a representative system, I think people will start to realize that like the system is actually representing voters. If that makes sense. But great question. Yeah.
So you kind of spoke about how at like the core of this project, it's like it's supposed to be a grassroots thing. It doesn't necessarily require like executive orders or legislation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm curious about your view on things like publicly financed elections, ranked choice voting, and then abolishing the Senate and the Electoral College. And if you think those reforms are like good or would it push us in the right direction, if you think they're unnecessary, or what your view is on that.
That is a great question. Throw me those three again and then I'll tackle them one by one.
Publicly financed elections, abolishing the Electoral College and the Senate, and whichever one you'd rather tackle, and then ranked choice voting.
Publicly funded elections, absolutely, it's brilliant. It's a really smart idea, right? The funding of our elections and why these political parties have so much money to misinform and manipulate. It's coming from large-scale donors. It's coming from super PACs, and it's coming from lobbyists. So this idea of publicly funding our elections, which other democratic republics around the world do, a few of them, it removes a lot of money from the political system. Love that idea. Abolishing the Electoral College, that would take a constitutional amendment I do feel that it's not the most representative system, right? It's not this idea of one citizen, one vote. Most of the time, the results of the Electoral College represent the popular vote. Recently, that hasn't been the case for the presidential election. I would be okay with that, but I don't think it's super necessary as far as that one goes. And ranked choice voting, as far as elected officials, I think that makes a lot of sense. When you make an account on voter-directed network, you'll see that the structure of our content creation system ends in creating voting questions. It starts with like the title of a statement that you're creating, then you identify topics and all of that. And then what we want you to do is you take your statement, you take your idea, and create a voting question. And the voting questions on the platform, you can create a yes/no question, a multiple choice question, a ranked choice question, or an agree/disagree question where people can agree or disagree on a scale from -10 to +10. So the idea of ranked choice is a really interesting way to represent voters' collective opinions. Great. Yeah.
If I were a Democrat and there was an election coming up and I had to choose between a Democrat who shares a lot of these ideas, who is just registered as a Democrat, or an independent, I mean, why should I vote for the independent over the Democrat?
Sure. So our theory is that both political parties are immensely corrupt, right? And there's more slides coming that really breaks that down. Billions of dollars are funneled into both political parties to maintain the status quo of broken, violent systems. And then for me personally, the violence is happening no matter which political party is empowered. So I would say to support the independent candidate because both political parties, no matter which one has more power, create violent systems for us to live under. Yeah, great questions, you all. Great questions, yeah.
I would ask, for the political system that we have right now being so controlled by money, trying to come in with like an outside concept, I think is gonna get obviously a lot of like pushback from the system because it's not just gonna take it lying down. So my question would be, how well do you think you can use like whatever the establishment's reaction is towards the movement and actually like put that into more like headlines and like spreading the message and like actually capitalizing off of the reactionary, like,
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really big part of it, that once we start to grow, once this creates traction and people are more aware of it, that the establishment is going to react strongly to it. And we saw that, I was born in '91, but in the '90s, that happened significantly. A third-party candidate gained a lot of support, and as a result, the ballot access laws became very restrictive. So I think that is an important part and going to be a big part of our messaging once Team Red and Team Blue come out in opposition to this. It's going to be like, hey, if we're opposed by both corrupt and violent political institutions, what does that tell you about the party-controlled structure in general? But yeah, that is definitely something that's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like, if something like this grows, I'm thinking about like what that's gonna look like to main like news outlets, because obviously so many like CNN, Fox News, like they're so biased on either side. So if something like this grows, I think both sides are just gonna kind of bash what's going on, like this movement that's going on. So like, how do you get something like that out when you're gonna have like main news outlets that are just bashing it?
Yeah, I think independent media is so important in a lot of different ways. And social media cuts in both directions, right? Social media has created this dynamic of techno-authoritarianism, technology-supported authoritarianism, how it's contributing to the surveillance state, and it's how it's really funneling people into echo chambers. But social media has also democratized our media and our ability to promote ideas via social media. So I think relying on those dynamics and independent media, and then of course, the basic idea of democracy itself is the power of the people. So at some point, they're going to have to reconcile with the amount of voters that are behind this idea. Because again, there are so many issues that the vast majority of us agree on that aren't happening. And once people realize that it's a system where we can actually live in a democratic republic and fix our political dynamics, I think we'll see a lot of people move in this direction. Because this is just year one. We've been promoting this idea since the beginning of this year. Working on it for a while, but promoting this idea. Any other questions? Wonderful questions. Yeah.
How do you, how will this new system like prevent the thing that's going on to happen, like, because like, okay, so you create this system, but what if in this system then there comes people that are corrupt and they like bring you back to this thing? So how does the system will prevent that from happening, or like it being corrupt and, you know?
Sure, yeah. The interesting part about this idea is that it is like a two-way door, that it's helpful in explaining this, that there's really no risk to it. We can always pivot back to the system of broken, flawed, corrupt, divisive, authoritarian party politics. But I think it's unlikely to happen when it's fully implemented. I think it's, with these ideas, things can move really quickly, or it can take decades, right? The civil rights movement, this brilliant movement of liberation and freedom and rights for all, took years of soft power. So we're probably looking at that type of system, but I think it would be hard to pivot away from once people realize how much we're actually empowering voters. But yeah, evil exists everywhere and can break things if it tries hard enough. So yeah, great questions.
So you've been using social media to get your message out?
Yes, yeah, we just started building our following and content and all of that pretty much starting this year, so don't have a ton of traction there. And a lot of people are aware that certain topics are very censored across social media now. We all, most people understand how deeply aligned social media is with one or both of the political parties, because when we're really talking about high-level structures and money-making structures, most of them donate to both political parties to maintain this status quo. So we're using it, but again, I think all of that really happens and starts to snowball together once we get actual true voter support of the idea. Because then everybody would ideally be contributing to the conversations on social media. But there's a lot that's being censored, a ton that's being censored. About anything that's nonpartisan, about anything that's independent. And of course, the largest issues that people are most passionate about, going out into the community and talking to voters, right? It's the Iran war, it's the Epstein files, it's these layers of violence and corruption within our systems. And those are some of the things that are most censored by social media. So it's an uphill battle in a lot of different ways, but everything changes and moves with a breakthrough moment and mass voter support. Awesome. So we're going to focus in and really look at the problems of party politics. Authoritarianism in human history, there have been many, many types, and the defining characteristic of authoritarian government is that it centralizes and consolidates political power. Government decision-making power is in the hands of a few. There's lots of different names: monarchy, oligarchy, plutocracy, kleptocracy, aristocracy, chiefdom kingdoms, flawed democracy, military dictatorship, and empire. And most authoritarian government structures kind of pull from those different types to create like their own mess of authoritarian dynamics. And historically, it has been proven they are often very violent, often corrupt, hateful, oppressive, and divisive forms of government. And almost universally, the more democratic Republican a society and government comes, the better societal outcomes almost across the board. Authoritarianism can work with like a benevolent authoritarian with very small populations, but anytime you're like getting above like the 5,000 voter threshold or 5,000 citizen threshold, it has to be Democratic Republican to actually represent the needs of the many and not just the few. And the only alternative we have to authoritarianism is democratic republicanism. And historically, it is extremely rare, extremely rare. We're kind of living in this era of flawed democratic republicanism, which is better than authoritarianism, but looking throughout like the course of human history over these thousands of years, it's rare and difficult to maintain internally, because once parties get their hands on the levers of political power, that's where you get widespread political corruption, and externally because of invasion. It is a big part of authoritarian structures to invade democratic republics and implement authoritarian structures that benefit a larger authoritarian structures. So we have to work at this. We have to work to maintain these dynamics, because even once you establish a republic, most notably, I think in modern times, the Weimar Republic of Germany, a political party, the Nazi Party, was elected to power. And because of the dynamics of party politics, it dismantled the republic and it became a full-on fascist, authoritarian, totalitarian state. So even when you have an established democratic republic, authoritarian dynamics are right around the corner unless you relentlessly work to implement the will of the people. This structure of voter-directed democracy and voter-directed democratic republicanism is targeting two types of party-controlled corruption: financial corruption, which occurs when money, goods, services, or some other benefit is given to elected officials from individuals or political organizations in exchange for a desired political decision, action, or inaction. Some financial corruption in the US is illegal, call that bribes, but the vast majority of financial corruption is perfectly legal. This is how the party-controlled political system makes bribery okay. It labels it a donation, but the crucial thing to understand is, like, philosophically, there is no difference between a bribe and a donation, because both of them come with an expectation. Then we have agenda corruption. Financial corruption leads directly to agenda corruption, but sometimes there's agenda corruption that is accidental. Accidental agenda corruption happens mostly at like the local level, where we have less financial corruption, but we have city, county, and school boards are trying to do the right thing and trying to represent voters. They just don't have access to that information. There's no website created or no system created before voter-directed network to centralize people's knowledge, wisdom, and expertise. So we have agenda corruption that is purposeful as a result of financial corruption and then also accidental. The party-driven problem. The problem created by authoritarian party-controlled political systems is the inconsistency between the will of the people and the public agenda. In other words, the systemic political problem that we're trying to address is the authoritarian failures of democratic republicanism caused by party politics that have created this dynamic of oligarchy. Oligarchy is the word that most people know, that I believe is accurate. We have an oligarchy, but again, authoritarianism pulls from a lot of different models. I also would say we have a plutocracy, which is government by the wealthy. And then we also have a kleptocracy. Does anybody know what a kleptocracy is? Government by thieves. The best example of it, anybody seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies? They go to this island called Tortuga. That is a kleptocracy. That is government by thieves, government by pirates. So the idea here is that an enormous amount of wealth has been stolen from the majority of people that has resulted in this dynamic of kleptocracy over a period of time. And then again, we're talking about the inconsistency between the will of the people and the public agenda. The will of the people is just what voters want, and the public agenda is what government actually does. And in a functional democratic republic, the public agenda should always be precisely representative of the collectively identified will of the people. Almost always. There are exceptions, right? If the will of the people desires something that is unconstitutional, it shouldn't be implemented by a legislative process. You have to amend the Constitution. So you still want the will of the people always represented, but you just have to be careful about how that happens when it comes to certain policy dynamics. So what perpetuates this problem? Again, we're talking about party-controlled systems. And this idea of why hasn't it been solved? What continues this disconnect between the will of the people and the public agenda? And it's political parties perpetuate the corruption. They are the greatest sources, perpetrators, and targets for financial and agenda corruption. And looking closer at the political parties and the party-controlled political system we have here, there are three main flaws that you can apply to both political parties that make them authoritarian. And if you understand this, you understand why party politics isn't democratic republicanism. It's a structure of authoritarianism. And the three main ones are political parties are intentionally limiting. Political parties are easily corruptible, and political parties centralize and consolidate political power. Rather than having it remain with voters, it is centralized and consolidated into political institutions that we are forced to call parties, which is one of just like the strange parts of our language that we use around this, right? Every other party, great. Graduation parties, birthday parties, Labor Day parties, all good. Political parties are these institutions that lead to systemic violence and aren't exciting and good. To break these down, political parties are intentionally limiting. Most modern political parties create artificial political boundaries and are not flexible enough to accurately represent the constellation of opinions held by their affiliated voters. political parties to create their platforms, plant their flags in relation to social, political, and economic issues according to what their large donors, lobbyists, and super PACs desire, and then intentionally ignore the will of the people / voters, right? This is not democratic republicanism. This is oligarchy. This is plutocracy. And we see this throughout decades now. I think the most notable and well-known research on this was from researchers Winters and Page out of Northwestern and Princeton University. They looked at the policies that were being passed since the 1980s, and then their study came out in 2009. So from 1981 to 2008, they looked at everything that was being implemented by our federal government, and it is clearly an oligarchy. The needs, the wants, the desires of the majority were not being implemented. And that's because political parties intentionally limit what their platform is. And we all want so many things changed, most of us do, but the parties maybe promote 2 to 3 things every election cycle, but if you're aware of how much people suffer, right, we want significantly different systems. So political parties are intentionally limiting. Political parties are easily corruptible. There are a few disproportionately powerful individuals that operate most modern political parties and can influence the agenda of the entire party. So there are appointed leaders at the state and federal level of both political parties. And we see this time and time and time again, that all an oligarch and authoritarian has to do is corrupt these leaders, both formal and informal. There are formal appointed leaders, but all of us can think of the leaders that are always around and most well known around the political party. And if you corrupt them, you corrupt the entire party. There's many examples of this. And then also, there are only a few hundred individuals that have the real yes-no political power across all 3 branches of federal government. And if authority is housed within political parties and we're not directly sourcing the will of the people from voters, then it's only a few hundred people that you have to corrupt. It's an easily corruptible system, which makes it authoritarian.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
So, back to feasibility, you just mentioned the institutions and their branches of government, right? What strategy do you use? And I know that you're beginning and you're starting this off and it's a progression. I don't know how long you foresee or how long this will take. None of us knows, right?
Right.
Like, do we have the time for this? None of us knows.
Right.
This is a good attempt. How do you break down the political party power system structure? And then once you've done that, don't you think that we have institutions that are corrupted as well? And what role do they play in your attempt to break through the political power of the parties with the institutional sources that they could use to hold on to that power?
Yeah, I would hope that the institutions that were corrupted by the party structures would then reemerge back to a position of independence and nonpartisanship. And then as far as addressing the structure of political parties, again, like, it has to be supported en masse by voters. And that's why that one slide that looked at the online political evolution, it's crucial that voters make the decision not to vote for party candidates and not to support the party system financially as well. So I think it all flows from voters making the choice And that's how we dismantle the party system. And then hopefully the institutions that were corrupted by those dynamics move forward and improve along with the parties that ideally no longer exist.
And the gatekeeping media.
Yeah, right, yeah, and which is why the independent media is crucial, really big part of this. My slides got, oh, yeah, okay. This is right. So this is just looking at the corruption of the party system. In this 18-month period alone, at the federal level alone, party-controlled political system collected billions and billions of dollars. And this is, again, only at the federal system. And this is only an 18-month period. And this is also to the idea, like, there isn't a not corrupt political party. This is from both of them. Many times, super PACs for different industries are donating to both political parties. And with this idea and looking at how much political corruption is going on just at the federal level, we believe with voter-directed democracy and online political evolution that all political donations are political corruption. It is definitely a matter of scale. When we give $20, $25, $50, right? That is a very, 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 very mild form of political corruption. And then, of course, extreme political corruption are like the 9-figure checks that happen. But all of them are corruption because all of them come with an expectation. You're not giving money to anything without an expectation. And that expectation is the corruption. Yes.
In this system, how do you plan to run like campaigns for offices or like, are they, because you know that right now, like you have to, like every candidate has to pay for a campaign to get elected, like how will campaigns run in this system based on like, because you're saying that, so basically every donation to every politician is a corruption because they're expecting something in return.
Right.
So how will this work in this new system, like trying to get away from that?
So ideally moving towards a structure of publicly funding elections, which an individual that wants to run is given like a certain sum of money, and that's the only money that they have, and it's equally given to all people. That is the ideal structure to move into. As the structure, as the evolution is happening, I guess, as this transition is happening, as the movement is unfolding, it is going to be likely using donations still in a very public, honest, and transparent way. I think within the structure and system we have now, there are candidates that only accept small individual donations, and that would be like the least corrupt, right? So candidates, and creating the expectation that candidates don't use super PAC money, don't use lobbyist money, don't use these mechanisms of large-scale political corruption. That's how we kind of lean into this new system, but definitely publicly funding elections would be the ideal structure. Great question. Yeah.
In a publicly funded election system, would you still have people like, I don't know, like canvassing like door to door, like spreading the message by word of mouth? And then if so, is that not the same thing? Because those people are taking time out of their day to volunteer. They have to have the economic status to be able to take a day off of work, or just like use the weekend instead of, you know, working a second job or something. And obviously that's so much less, it's a smaller amount of money, or like control that money has in that situation.
Right.
But it still is some sort of like bias towards a higher economic status.
Great point, great point. I think within politics in general, I think that is more of a gray area than anything else related to like financial corruption. So I honestly would be okay with that, but what you're talking about and what everything should be collectively determined. It doesn't truly matter what I think or any other individual in power or around power or a candidate for power thinks. It's all about what the will of the people is. But you're talking about also ballot access laws. So starting April 15th, I and our team of volunteers will be going door to door to collect signatures. But within the party-controlled system, the party candidates don't have to do that. They obviously have the primary structure. So what is ballot access look like in a voter-controlled system? Really interesting, really interesting. It seems like an idea of like a primary structure makes sense even when we move to a fully independent structure. But I think the most important thing is removing money first from it. Because also like you do want, and having volunteers go door to door, like that to me also creates a feeling of actual democracy. That's like people that are passionate and want things done and believe in other leaders that are working towards it. You're right that it's a form of mild corruption.
But it's more earnest.
Yeah.
It's- Yeah.
Precisely, yes.
You might have already answered this a little bit, but do you think that this applies at all to like local elections as well, or like nonpartisan races, stuff like that? Cause like in local elections, like we still spend like $1,000 per race. There's Steve Doyle for assembly, like that's $1 million race right there.
Yep.
Like, how does that apply to even the smaller elections that aren't just federally?
Great question. So when it comes to philosophy, the best way to check your work type thing is to apply it as broadly as you can. So our idea is that this structure should and can and would work at any level of government. Our efforts are focused right now at the federal and state level because that's where the greatest power is, that's where the biggest problems are. But yes, definitely, ideally, like we transform the federal government and state government, and that kind of pulls everybody into the system. If everybody is eventually like we developed voterdirectednetwork.com. The big idea is voterdirectednetwork.gov. So if everybody's already on there voting at the federal level, voting in their different districts, then it'll pull the school boards and the local, yeah.
Yeah, and a bit of a follow-up to that as well. Forgive me if you answer this as well, but I guess my question is like, why start federally at the very top? Like, I know that there's a lot of the corruption there, but like, I don't know, in my mind, it just makes more sense to start locally and build up from there rather than
Sure.
top down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think either way is wrong. It's just like period of time and like resources. It's all bare bones as far as like what we have. We had enough money to build like the platform and all of that, and so to be able to get like the most attention, like that's why we're targeting like the federal level. But interesting you mentioned that. Yesterday I had a meeting with our mayor, who I'm a huge fan of. He's a really great guy, Mayor Shondell, and he's interested in it, and we're having these back and forth conversations about it. So I think neither option is wrong, and so to be able to pilot the idea on a smaller scale while also trying to push it towards like the federal and state government is best. But yes, definitely great.
Yeah, so I think like taking money out of it like sounds like a great idea, but I just see it that it like, how do you stop people from receiving money like under this table? Like, I mean, like it sounds like a great idea, but is everyone just gonna agree, say, yeah, we're only gonna take these small amounts of money? If you still do donations and you set a limit at it, like, I feel like, you know, systems are corrupt, but I think so are people, and like how do you just stop people from receiving money under the table? Cause there's gonna be, whatever, billionaires that like one certain independent, and they're gonna, under the table say, push these things and give them money under the table, like even if it's not public, how do you stop people from being corrupt?
Right, you are 100% correct. There can't ever be a system that removes that type of evil and corruption entirely. It's this creating like the right theory for people to follow. And I think more tangibly, systems reflect this in other countries. The most democratic countries around the world significantly limit in a legal way how much money can be involved with elections. So you're 100% correct, like we'll never have this ideal system where money doesn't influence it, but we're working towards a theory and implementing ideas to create limitations of how much money, because right, thousands of dollars in the political system, way better than billions of dollars within the political system, I would say. Yeah, we'll snake down through here.
So one of your campaign messaging on like your flyers are like zero money. What is your plan to successfully run a campaign without getting the financial aspect of it?
Right, so from our perspective, there's also other theories and models where what you gain from media is earned. So it's this creating like the right content on social media, reaching out directly to local media and running that. But then, yeah, it's a limiting factor to our campaign. But then the number that is most significant for a lot of people is like the $5,000 threshold, because then reporting of your campaign changes dramatically. So zero money isn't 100% accurate, right? Like I bought flyers and I have to gas my car and all of that, but zero money from donors essentially is the idea.
And PACs.
Yeah, and PACs and lobbyists and all of that, yeah. Do you have a question?
You mentioned public funding for elections, but like, how would you get people on board to publicly fund elections when some communities don't even want to fund schools or like basic EMS, services?
Sure, right. It is making the argument and illustrating the case that allocating a very limited amount of money to each candidate way better than billionaires and oligarchs and authoritarians doing whatever they want via super PACs and lobbyists. But yeah, it's hard to get good ideas funded in a lot of different ways. But yeah, definitely, yeah.
I guess another question that I have is like when you're limiting like people being able to donate to campaigns, are you also limiting individual candidates taking money from their own bank accounts too and using their personal money for campaigns?
That's really interesting. Great question. They're smart here. They're doing well. With what I know about the publicly funded structures is that it is limited. That so a millionaire can't use his millions. He's only entitled to the $10,000 that the federal government allows him to spend. That's what I know. I'm trying to think of the countries that are publicly funded, but usually it's just like that is the only amount of money that you're allowed to spend. Yeah.
So you said that the most important thing, like the most important first step within this process is like eliminating the political corruption, like the money, right? Money in politics.
Yeah.
I guess I would like to maybe offer a different frame, or maybe even slightly push back on the way that you frame the issue, in the sense that I feel like the way that you're framing it, like both parties are corrupt. In a sense, that's true, but if you look at like the makeup of the parties and like the ideologies, there are a variety of Democrats in the Progressive Caucus who are committed to taking no, like, large money and dark money, you only take small dollar donations, and there's a variety of Democratic representatives that are in favor of publicly funded elections. I worry that putting this message out there makes people apathetic to the fact that there really isn't a difference between the parties, and if you actually want to get something like publicly funded elections, the best way to do that, currently, in my view, seems to be getting something like a Democratic supermajority. So, I guess, whatever you want to respond to there.
Sure, yeah, I think that is a valid point, that there's factions and caucuses within each political party, and we're generalizing here, like saying that they're both the same. I would say, though, that our long-term issues, our long-term social, political, and economic issues have been here for decades, and that I think most notably, and this is again getting back to this 80% bill, where 80% of people agree with these issues. So no matter which political party had more power over the past decade, we've had perpetual war. We've had widespread poverty. We've had unaffordable housing and education. I think there are really good human beings that do get elected that are forced into these broken and corrupt political structures. But ultimately, as long as these structures exist, I don't think we're really going to move the needle on any of these large-scale issues that, again, the vast majority seem to agree with. But you are you are correct. They're all right. They're all right. Yeah.
I am a big supporter of the no two-party system. I think it's terrible, but I think human psychology shows that we always want to be a part of a group, and specifically a winning group, which is why I don't really believe that independence will ever take hold in an election. I think if it was a feasible thing, it would have been consistently done a long time ago. And kind of like picking off of what you said is, there are a significant amount of Democrats now who are taking pledges that no corporate PAC money. And the argument you were talking about is getting the 300 independent officials elected versus 300 Democrats who are elected with the same ideas. That seems more appealing and realistic to me than 300 independents.
Yeah, I think there's a lesser of the evils, but I also just recently, most recently, when the Democratic Party had more political power, there's this like a tendency that they always bobble it and they don't actually like implement it, and like you have to ask yourself why. So it seems to me, specifically with this idea of like there are members of the Democratic Party talking about these issues, but the party as a whole is again accepting billions of dollars. And it's this dynamic that I see and researched, and like looking back, that they talk a lot about what the people want, but then whenever they come to actual power, it's these same dynamics over and over again. And then your point about being a part of a team is really, really smart and crucial. And again, I think the idea of uniting behind a different system creates this sense of unity. And I think that's where like the team comes in, that we're using this system rather than fighting each other. But accurate, yeah.
Yeah, to add to what he said, like actually when you start learning about how government and politics work, like political parties form because there are like many people who have the same belief on something, and they gather together to push that belief. So what he's saying is true, and like the theory proves it, that that's why political parties are formed. So like, yeah, like even though, I don't know, you can correct me, but like I think that even in this system, like there will be people who will like join to together in this group so that they will like feel like, you know, the more the merrier, you know, and we're more so like, yeah, like it's human nature, so yeah. And humans throughout history have done that. They have looked for people who have the same interests as them and they join together and they form something, you know, so.
Yeah, very, very great observation. To that, I would say, is that even within our Constitution, the idea of creating political groups or a political party is protected. That is a constitutional right to assemble together. And I would look at it like this, that creating groups, plenty of nonprofits for decades and decades have been trying to end homelessness for just one issue. And creating a group, a committee, a team around specific issues is democracy, is democratic republicanism. But having that balloon into where it's just 2, 3, even 4 corrupt and violent structures is completely different. So organizing around specific issues, everybody has the issues that they're passionate about, that is democracy. But doing it where all of the political power is just isolated into institutions isn't that. So to be able to walk that line, and I think that's really important, and thank you for bringing that up, that humans are gonna create groups. We're naturally very social like that. And so there's this immense room and space for people to come together, whether it's homelessness or taxes or freedom or whatever your passions are, to create those groups. But maintaining a system where ultimate yes-no power exists in the hands of all voters, I think that's the ideal structure, because we're always going to have nonprofits and other institutions around the political system. But that's great. Yeah. Yes.
This might be a cynical question, but I guess, what are your thoughts on like the possibility of this like splitting votes and stuff like that? Like, why do, like, you said it was gonna be a long, slow process, and I fear that like that would split the vote, and like it would be like, oh, if Republicans and independents really want, or are split between 2 candidates, and then the Democrat that they really don't want gets elected, like, what's the point of any of it then, if that makes sense?
Yeah, this is kind of like the idea of like spoiling an election, a third party, like spoiling the election. And you are, I would say that is very cynical. It kind of also ties into this, like, we can only vote for the lesser of the 2 evils. Like, if you are aware of how broken, flawed, corrupt, authoritarian this system is, like, you've got to oppose it entirely, I think. And it's very limiting negative thinking, saying that that a system like this is going to spoil it, where it's opposing all of like the negative dynamics of that system. Yeah.
It's tough to distinguish between the system and then your candidacy, right?
Yeah.
So those are 2 different things.
Yes. Yeah.
In this regard.
Yeah. Important. Great questions. This is wonderful. Thank you all for contributing to the conversation. I can keep going. And then, so this is the third dynamic of political parties that make them authoritarian. Modern political parties consolidate and centralize political power. This is literally what they exist to do and what they promise voters they will do. Political parties promise voters that if enough of their elected official candidates are empowered, they will implement the party's articulated agenda. By centralizing and consolidating political power in this way, the 2 major political parties in the US and other party-driven democracies effectively have complete control over the public agenda. So again, rather than having this system of independence where ultimate yes-no political power exists in the hands of all voters, centralizing and consolidating political power makes it an authoritarian system. And lots of democracies that fall internally fall because of this dynamic. One political party gets too much political power, and then they seize all levers of power. And I think we're actually seeing a lot of that today, currently. If political power were really distributed in the hands of voters, I think our Constitution would be more respected. But it's because one political party has so much power that we have many of the dynamics that are playing out today, most notably, but it's been a slow descent over the past 3 decades to these current dynamics. Again, we have this slide, and I think we illustrated this. Any other questions right now? Yeah.
Just to like help support you in the future, reading online about you, a lot of sites claim that you're running for governor.
Yeah, that's not accurate.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know where that came specifically, but I was trying to figure out like which way to go and mentioned like the federal and the state possibility, but that got picked up. So it is running for the U.S. House of Representatives in November. Yes.
So I just wanted to add to her point with the third-party candidacy. So in the end, it would be nice that the system turns into this, but you would be taking votes away from competing parties, right? Like you realize, and it's not like cynical because it happens, and it's realistic because
Sure.
it happened
Yeah.
in Wisconsin elections, presidential elections, where a third-party candidate took valuable votes away from the Democratic candidate, and then the Republican candidate won. So there's that. Also, in terms of time, like, this is a great idea. Obviously, you're here. I'm in support of stuff like this. Do you think what's gonna happen first, voter-directed democracy, or would it be easier to overturn Citizens United?
Oh, man. Let's do both.
Yeah, let's do both. No,
yeah.
What's Citizens United, like what's that?
All you need to do is pass a law, right, with 60 votes in the
just-
Senate? It doesn't even need to be a constitutional amendment to create a citizen's united.
Isn't it a Supreme Court?
Supreme Court would have to decide whether it's constitutional.
Oh, man. I think,
Unlimited spending.
yeah, I think ideally all of this moves together. That if, and that's one of the things that has well over 80% support. So I would think that if and when an idea like this starts to take off, that'll be something that will be challenged immediately. And then the Supreme Court should follow that will of the people. I think that might have to flip first to really see this system work to its greatest ability.
That's kind of where my institutions question was coming from earlier.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see needs to happen in order for this utopia to actually take place?
Very realistic utopia, but yeah.
Where are you at with Supreme Court reform to piggyback on that? Like, are you-
Oh, man, that is my #1 constitutional amendment. We should elect our Supreme Court just like we elect the Senate. I think, I'd be open to anything, but like lifetime appointments, that's crazy. We should directly elect the Supreme Court through some type of cycle similar to the House of Representatives or Senate. Yeah.
What do you think the term limit for Supreme Court justices should be?
So we got U.S. House of Representatives, 2 years, Senate, 6 years, Supreme Court, could split that and go 4, but the president is there. I would say two terms of 10 years, but this would be a great thing to openly and transparently discuss on voter-directed network, right? Yeah, because any structure that gives the power to elect the Supreme Court to voters, I think is ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually just talked about that in one of my other classes, and so with your, obviously there's lenient judges, and so if it were up to the people, and, I mean, I know you want the independent system, but like right now, wouldn't people just vote for those, like, just red or blue? Like, would it really would it really be different? Cause I think there's so many people who just go with whatever side, you know, they affiliate with, so it's like, they're just gonna choose the red judges and the blue judges. So
All right.
would it really change anything if it was elected?
Right, so if a constitutional amendment passed, next month, to change it, you're probably right. It would fall to partisan dynamics, but if we're implementing the system of independents and independent elected officials, I think we'll see a different dynamic play out. But I think implementing this system is almost easier at this point in time than passing a constitutional amendment. It's just very difficult, given everything that's going on. And a lot of people will push for comprehensive constitutional amendments to change a lot, which wouldn't pass because the status quo of the party-controlled system benefits so much by how things are being practiced right now. So, yeah, cool, great. Are we running out of time?
We got like a couple more minutes.
Couple more minutes, what do we got? So large-scale goals of the online political evolution, modernize and evolve our practices of democratic republicanism, reduce political corruption. We've talked a lot about that, but ultimately the solution to corruption in any institution is accountability and transparency. And this type of system will bring a lot of accountability and transparency to politics in general. And we're also talking about a system that aligns our practices of democratic republicanism with the theory, values, and principles of democratic republicanism. I really love our Constitution, especially with all of the amendments and the federal legislation we have to actually implement those amendments. I think it's in a great place. We're just not practicing it. And if we practice it via an independent voter-directed system, we'll be living by the Constitution. We'll be living by the theory and values of the Constitution.
I think you already answered this question, but like, what was your stance on the electoral college, and do you think that it's actually like fair, or like if you compare it to other countries, like in it says with the people, and I think that actually like in the electoral college, like actually sometimes it like this past election it was not the case, but like in other elections it has been like the majority has elected a candidate and then the other one wins because he won in more states that had more votes. So like, do you think it's fair, or like what's your stance on it?
Sure, I would prefer a system that just uses the popular vote, but as you noted, most times the popular vote agrees with the results of the electoral college. But I think if we're really looking to empower voters as much as we can, because that's our idea, voters vote on everything and like the Republic just does it, I think eliminating the electoral college and just using the popular vote is more democratic in general. Yeah.
And Alexandra will continue public dialogue with this at the Pump House this weekend on Saturday.
Yes, Saturday, 3 p.m. at the Pump House. We're doing one of our first community events. Come check it out. That would be awesome. And thank you so much for the conversation here. Thank you for having me. This is great to know that you guys are all headed in the right direction as far as your education, and you guys are having the right thoughts about our political system. It is so encouraging to see. Thank you for
Thanks for coming in.
all you do. Thank you.
All right, I guess we will start our presentations on Thursday with group one. So get in contact with your groups if you haven't already to determine the division of labor and how you're going to go about your presentations. And I can talk more about that on.
I know, where's the group? Is it like?
My name's Beck.
Nice to meet you.
I,
Thank you so much for your questions.
I really believe in the system. I was giving it a little hard time.
No,
It is
no,
hard,
that's
but
great. That's really just a hard question. What's your major?
I'm a public advocate, so, but I was hoping I could issue a party phone number, business card or something, get in contact with you.
Dude, yeah, I was
Get involved
gonna,
more with campaigns, and I'd love to help you out in any way I can.
dude, I appreciate that. That is so great and so positive. If I can get your name and contact. Yeah, the biggest thing coming up starting April 15th is gathering signatures, and young college students walking around talking to other young college students getting signatures would be a huge way to help.
Yeah, I know a few people. I would be able to help with that.
Great, man. Yeah, and I kind of mentioned it, it's a huge uphill battle, but I don't think there's anything more important. Because like we can move within the systems we have now, but if we're actually looking at like changing the world, reducing human suffering, like we have to address the main issues. So it's well worth it. Awesome. Very nice to meet
Thank you for coming today. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
I'm also trying to see if there's like a free public media. If I find one, it's like more than a chapter, I think, because I found the table of contents. Yeah, it covers a lot. I'll probably like try to find something like before the end of this week, or like so we have like a week to read it. Because then we should probably all read like most of it, but then like we can work on it individually.
Yeah.
5 people in this?
Five. Yeah, we should probably.
Okay, I got it.
Thanks, sir.
That was great.
See, I told you, man.
Yeah. This feels so good. Like I said before we walked down here, like the energy and the thought process of college students, I just love it.
And
I just love
they
it.
got their stuff together.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Some
so
great questions. I didn't expect it. I feel like I got harder questions today than I'm going to get on Saturday.
that's why I had you come in for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, just because I knew that these guys would hold your feet a little bit under the fire, because they're looking for any, like all of us, looking for any out.
Yeah.
And how can we get there?
Yeah.
And then what, like, and because of the juggernaut of our current systems, it makes it difficult to try to get past that. But once you do, and like when you open it up, like once we get there, then we can continue this process.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to convince them that we can get there.
Yeah, because I think the most difficult questions start with this feeling of apathy. Like, okay, we know the real dynamics, we know the extent of the problems and all of that. So it's like breaking through that, like, yes, you're right, yes, there are some people, but like if we're really trying to change things, it's gotta be systemic, it's
It's
gotta
gotta
be
start at some place.
comprehensive, and even like if you get like a high character individual like the president, which I think we did in 2008, like
Right.
he towed the party line entirely.
Well, yeah, and
entirely.
he's got problems. And
Yeah.
yeah, right. So the
Sorry,
greatest president, but
Libya.
yes, he had issues,
Yeah.
and he had to, and.
Banks too big to fail,
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
it, all of it, like where all
Have
the
you ever read
campaign
The
promises.
Third Reconstruction?
Yeah.
That's awesome.